Here we go. This is Ungovernable. I am Matt. This is
Jocelyn.
Yes, it is. We are here live every Sunday night at 7 p.m. We have an awesome one. We have a little bit of a different episode this weekend.
And we just got back from an escape room. First ever.
Yes, yeah. Hold on. Did I say live Sunday or Saturday? It's Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah, we're
Sunday.
live Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a weekend, people. Yes, we just got back from escape room. We failed.
I figured out a clue.
You contributed.
I absolutely contributed,
which was fantastic. Actually, everyone kind of contributed.
I think it's fair to say we were the only adults in the group.
Yes.
Yeah. It was our first time.
Yeah, and we got within, I think, like 2 things of the end. So for the first one, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
All right. So anyone who's unfamiliar with the show, this is Ungovernable. We talk about spirituality, mind-body balance, physical health. We talk about conspiracy theories, all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah. The gamut.
Yeah, nothing is taboo here. I mean, nowadays a lot of things are taboo, but nothing is taboo here on Ungovernable.
No.
And really, we're seeking to be as open as possible, which ultimately also allows you to not fall victim to people that kind of want to diminish your world and diminish your viewpoint, or even feed you a viewpoint that causes you to not question. So with that, the algorithm doesn't like us because we curse and we drink on camera and we talk about crazy conspiracy theories. So we need your help. So give us a like, a subscribe, a follow, share this broadcast. And because we're here live, you can throw stuff into the comments and have a conversation with us while we're talking to other interesting people and talking about cool topics that you might not have ever heard about.
Yeah.
So with that, do you want to do the honors on the wine? I think you always defer to me. You should give your reaction here. I think this was an absolutely fantastic label.
It's a great label.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's like an eclipse like we had the other day.
It is literally called Eclipse.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
I can't read it. I see Eclipse.
Yes.
All right.
It is fantastic.
Is it a Dry Farm Wine?
Yeah, it is Dry Farm Wines. And really quickly, we are not sponsored by Dry Farm Wines.
But they are wonderful.
I mean, they're wonderful. Dry Farm, you want to sponsor us? I mean, I'm not above that. But that being said, this wine is a 2021. It's from Côte de Rhône in France. I got to do it service, right? And it is basically 40% Grenache, 33% Syrah, and 27%. I can never pronounce this correctly. Mourvèdre.
I'm glad that you did it, not me.
Mourvèdre. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So you do the honors there. We had an awesome conversation with Shane Hazel.
Such a good conversation.
Shane is a good friend of mine going back a couple of years. We actually have never met in person. I've driven through Georgia or to parts of Georgia. He lives in North Georgia, and we've never really been able to link up. But I have a lot of respect for Shane, and Shane has a incredible
he's so
arc of his life story.
He's so cool.
You know, he's seen a lot, done a lot. He's evolved so much over his lifetime. Oh, I got to give this a little bit of a sip here first.
It was a good conversation.
Oh, wow. That's really good.
Just put the top back on.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Full bodied.
Yeah, please give me more of that. We're going to kind of Mystery Science 3000 this thing.
Yeah, he couldn't be here live.
I'm going to pull the banner down. But again, reminder, sub and like and help us out. He couldn't be here for the live show on Sunday night. I believe Sunday, for the most part, actually the weekend is his family time. So he holds that sacred, and I completely respect him for that. So he couldn't make it for the live broadcast. So we have a recorded interview, and I'm going to try and make the tech work. So please, when I play the video, let me know if the sound is working, because that's going to be a big help, because I just want to make sure that the sound's getting through. We did a recorded video. It is wide-ranging.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's such a good conversation.
We talk about, let's see, what do you remember talking about?
I remember talking about Bitcoin for a while.
Oh,
mushroom.
Very shortly, Bitcoin.
Macro dosing and micro.
Yeah, micro and macro dosing.
Light warriors, but that was all kind of the same.
Yeah, we talk about our grounding sheets.
Grounding sheets.
Yes, yeah. What else is in there?
I don't know. We'll have to watch.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah. So
it was so good though.
We are going to kind of minimize our screen, and we're going to be here just drinking and kind of experiencing it with y'all. Occasionally, we might feel compelled to pause and interject our thoughts.
I don't know how I feel about watching myself, but it's okay. It'll be good.
Well, someone's going to be watching you. So with that, I'm going to try and make the share screen work. So I'm pulling up the video here. Again, in the comments, let me know if the sound is working when I hit play on this sucker. So with that, I'm going to mute us and turn on the video. Boy, and we're going. So so we just did an episode with Miranda, who is formerly Lily, who was on the Anarchists. And dude, freaking Anarchapulco uses like human design as part of their organizational structure.
That's hot.
Like their team building and stuff. They're like, oh no, you have this design, so you can't like work with that person.
You
like,
can't. I think it's you would do best.
Yeah, or like you need to talk to this person in this way, not that way. And it's freaking mind-blowing. Like, it's
amazing. Positive communication goes so far.
Yeah. So for the benefit of people that will be watching this, this is Shane Hazel. If you're not familiar with Shane ran for, let's see, U.S. Senate in Georgia and spoiled that bullshit, and then ran for governor, okay, and freaking laid the smackdown. The best governor debate I've ever seen.
Oh, that was so good. Life. It was so good.
You needed to say the line, "It's a plant," like 5 or 10 more times, right? Like that was such a good freaking performance. For anyone who's not familiar with you, like, how would you describe yourself? Who are you?
Oh, geez. I don't have a get out of here. I don't have a box. Don't tell me what to do. I think that's probably the best. I am somewhat disagreeable, but very open-minded. And I think that's, maybe where we jump off from. I've got a history in the Marine Corps and special operations. I've done a whole lot of stuff in business and international, sales and all that fun stuff for a long time. I work in Bitcoin now. I've got a family. I'm a homesteader. We homeschool. I run a couple of different 501c3s, one for post-traumatic stress, and have created, I think, 3 different podcasts now between the Rebellion, Radical, and Bitcoin Veterans. And I don't know, man. I'm just trying to. Obviously, I am throwing shit at the wall to see what will stick. So I am. I don't think you can really put me in a box. I'm just going to be everywhere all the time. Very.
I gotta say, no one can accuse you of being lazy. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I think some people wish I was a little lazier. That's for sure.
One of my favorite episodes of Radical is you getting the police chief on the phone and freaking lambasting him for pulling over, I guess it was your son's martial arts instructor, for being like black without a license or something like that in his domicile.
Yeah, he was driving. The guy does well, right? He's got this Lincoln Navigator, and the Lincoln Navigator had some issues, so he took
does
it
too good. Yeah.
And he did too good for a black man, apparently.
Yeah.
And so they gave him a replacement vehicle, another brand new Navigator, to drive off the lot with lot tags on it, and they pulled him for lot tags, right? Like, that's not standard operating procedure. Like we live in the mountains up here in North Georgia, and so you can run into some police officers that are a little less than critical thinking human beings, just checking things out, making sure he's on the upright, and make sure you prove your innocence. Yeah, so I went after those guys. We actually got when we did that whole thing, it ended up I made good friends with the mayor down here in Holly Springs, and started working with him in the city council. And we ended up getting civil asset forfeiture and all the funds that they would receive for civil asset forfeiture removed from their causes down there. So their police officers don't do civil asset forfeiture anymore, and they don't receive funds from the state or the feds for civil asset forfeiture anymore.
That is huge. And anytime legalized theft is removed from being legalized, that is an absolutely fantastic feat. Like, that's incredible.
It felt good. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
that felt good to get through there, and maybe we've saved somebody. hey, if you pulling people over just to see if you can't take away their navigator or whatever they have in that car, maybe you've saved somebody from those kind of experiences.
Yes. Yeah. And trigger happy
Yeah.
law enforcement types. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I would love to talk politics with you, and I might actually ask you like a political question at the end, just to
Okay.
kind of like sum things up. But that being said, we wanted to talk to you about spirituality because you recently did a episode where you and a couple of veterans, I believe some of the people that have appeared on your more Bitcoin centric show,
Mhm.
we're just kind of talking about spirituality and that kind of thing. And
Mm.
so I wanted to ask you, like, the last time I had you on, we had talked about some stuff, and actually, when we were talking about, say, like things like yoga nidra and some like alternative therapies and stuff like that. I think you were still rehabbing your back at the time, so like that's kind of what drove that conversation. But it seems like you've definitely delved a little bit, like even further into kind of like that spiritual realm. So like, what does that path look like for you? Say like within the last few months or a year, like what's really driven that path for you?
What's driven it? I think it drives itself, honestly. When I went in and started doing, let's just say, large amounts of psilocybin, I did, I was curious about it because it was one of those things that had piqued my interest. It's obviously being natural, and I don't mess with anything that's not you know God made, right? Like if it's modified by man, like, yeah, you guys can keep that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
It's a
yeah,
fungus. Yeah.
yeah, it's a fungus, and I guess the more I learned and studied it, and then would go out and use it as a tool for rehabilitation, post traumatic stress, I found that I was having these, for lack of better term, it sounds kind of silly, but visions.
Mm.
And obviously very easy to have visions when you're taking large amounts of psilocybin. Kind of the point, to a certain degree. Not just to go out and go, oh, look, pretty colors and geometric patterns and designs, but like, no, like what is really behind this. And as I've gone through this over the years now, which it has been a few years, and to see what it's doing and what's driving it is, I think, it, I know this maybe your crowd gets it, but the
You're
the
in the right place, Sam.
yeah, the psilocybin itself is actually a technology, I think.
Mm.
And I think it's one of those things that opens up your receptors. It does this thing, what the US government actually did a lot of study on, was called hemisync. It was a paper that was, I think, released in like 1983 or 84, by some very secret squirrels inside of the US military, right? Where they were doing a whole lot of uh, hemispheric sync between the different lobes of your brain so that you could concentrate and then be in different places than your body and
Mm.
target it, because your mind actually resonates at a super low frequency that is in line with the earth, so you can start to do all these things, especially through quantum mechanics, which this starts to bend this whole thing. I know I'm kind of getting off subject, but in terms of what I was receiving, it was more or less, I think, on this quantum basis, right? Like this technology that you ingest that comes into your system opens up your mind and the receptors in your mind, like your pineal gland, that has crystal resonance in it, that can now receive and transmit information. And so once you start to see it that way and now tap into the things that are around you that may hold energies, which is damn near everything, whether it's a mycelium network in the forest, whether it is an ancient rock structure that might just happen to be somewhere in the close vicinity, that's man-made, that's made out of crystalline quartz in a granitic structure that was placed on top of some soil where it shouldn't be tens of thousands of years ago. I'm just saying, some of these things have altered the way I see and what I think is possible in this universe. And so, with that being said, we've we've gone through multiple iterations of this post-traumatic stress thing called Brave. Kind of started out as a post-traumatic stress thing, and has now evolved into something much greater. Like, I mean, just on a different scale, where there are now groups of men and guys that I would call, like, literally, they're warriors. These guys have got it figured out. They know what they're doing. Their lives are in check. They are, they're checking all the boxes, especially in our realm, for independence, for self-sovereignty, for the understanding that you need to be a defensive creature, but you also have to be responsible. Extreme ownership and responsibility, kind of the Jocko side of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The homeschooling, and now we're talking about a much bigger picture in terms of spiritual warfare. And when you get a bunch of badasses that are centered in this realm and can start to work through quantum mechanics and energy because of these technologies and these Eastern types of philosophies, that when you add them into, I think, what most people grew up in terms of Christianity, and looking at that from the peace, the light, the love, not so much the church, but the peace, the light, and love that Christ taught, you start to get this really interesting group of people that can do some amazing work, not only in the physical world, but in the spiritual world. And that's kind of what's been driving this thing. And it's morphed I think to for us to grow ourselves, right? As we continue to learn, we're continuing to grow and find ourselves going down this path. And it's a pretty incredible path that we've been on for, I think, the past few years now.
All right, hold on. So I just want to talk really quickly about, you had mentioned while we were watching, and we didn't really kind of get into it. Oh, I got like the screen over my face here. Hold on. So we never really got into crystalline resonance when we were talking with him. He was talking about vibrational energy and kind of like getting that higher vibrational energy. And you had just mentioned it while we were watching. So did anything like come to mind in terms of?
I was just thinking about a lot of the different like human design is based around, there's like a crystal core. There's the crystal core of the earth. A lot of spirituality things mention crystals.
Yeah.
And how did he say it just now? He said it in a different way.
So he was talking about in terms of how psychedelics have affect the body.
Yeah.
And that they affect things like, parts of the brain and the pineal gland. And he was talking about essentially the crystalline structures or crystalline resonance that's associated with those biological structures.
Yeah, and there's like but across a bunch of different spiritual, I don't want to beliefs or philosophies. Yeah, there's that crystal core to things. Like we all have in human design, you have your crystal, your own crystal. I'm not even going to even say it correctly, but it's just something that goes across a lot, but it's not always talked about. I think people think it's very woo woo.
Yes. Well,
so the idea of like that we are connected to like a crystal core, crystal center.
Well, there is some woo woo, but there's also some hard science that's associated with it, because I think most people associate crystalline structures with like people who believe in crystals, right? And who believe in whatever it is, like healing crystals and stuff like that. But other substances can have a crystalline structure. So like the crystal formation of the molecules doesn't necessarily always result in like some hard kind of rock-like crystal, right? And so I think what he's talking about is the structure within say like biology, and what we were talking about the other day, how these things seem to be mirrored throughout like different aspects of life and existence. So he also talked about like a network of say like mycelium or roots or things. It's already been proven that plant networks pass messages back and forth.
Mushroom networks in the ground are fucking fascinating.
Well, and that's what he's talking about. He's not talking about literal crystals in that
well, he was talking about the pineal gland.
Well, no. He's also talking about how these things have these parallel kind of structures and formations to them.
In them.
But you find them in different places. and one of the attributes of, say, like a crystalline structure is how say like pressure or energy or a resonant frequency passes through it, and how it's shared across the crystalline structure. So it sounds woo-woo, but at the same
scientific in a way.
It has a very deep scientific application, and it's repeated in so many different places throughout the universe
that's like, just to not to take you off crystals, but when I was in college, I took this class. It was math. It was like college level math, but it was letters 1 to 10.
Yeah.
And all we did was do.
Wait, letters? No, one.
I mean, not numbers.
Oh, okay.
I haven't even drank that much.
I was gonna like,
what numbers?
We getting into a cipher again? What's going on?
Numbers 1 through 10, and each, like every 2 weeks, we just changed a number.
Mm-hmm.
But the number that fascinated me was 5, which is the golden mean, which is found everywhere in nature.
Yeah.
And in so many different, and the golden mean, that is like the conch shell.
Yes.
Is that the conch shell?
Yeah.
And all the different I don't remember any of it now, but at the same time, I remember being so fascinated that this golden mean was all of these places in nature, and you had all these connections.
Yeah.
I think the book was something like Connecting to the Universe from the numbers 1 to 10.
Yeah.
I know y'all are jealous where I took my math classes.
When we first got together, I came from engineering school, and she went to a class that taught her about numbers and their presence throughout the universe.
Like 1 is the point, 2 is the line.
And I was like, yeah, that's not math. And then the more I look into it,
there's
significance to this stuff.
And the way it resonates across nature. Now I have the book downstairs. I kind of want to go. I'm going to read up on it before the next.
Yes. That's a great free screen for you. All right. So I'm going to mute us back again, and we're going to go back to the...
All right. So hold on. Were you thinking Outlander like I was thinking Outlander?
No.
I just like the different structures.
The first thing I was thinking was, that was a fantastic episode. That's good. Let's wrap it up. It's done.
Let's go. Put a bow on it.
I had a friend who died last year, and he was microdosing psilocybin because he had cancer. And so I remember the one day he came over, and I'm like, you're totally microdosing right now, because I could see like he was seeing things, but not too much. That whole idea of microdosing is beautiful.
What was also incredible was this guy was someone who literally hundreds of people would have said that he made their life better just by
being
right.
Yeah.
And like I had only met him like a couple of times, and I could say that every single time I met him, he was literally like the light in the room. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. I'm sorry I cut you off, but like
no. I mean, but he was microdosing, and at the same time that he was microdosing, about a year ago, a friend of mine in California ended up getting her license for working therapy with PTSD and psilocybin, and which is something that is not really, I don't know if it's come to New Jersey in the same way. I mean, in California, they're kind of moving in that direction. And she's been talking a lot about using psilocybin as a therapeutic. And whenever, I feel like the one thing that happens is whenever like a field, like picks up something that is not normally in that field, I'm always wary of what they want to do with it.
You should be. There's a dark side. There's a very dark side to all of this, right? Is like, if it's a tool, it's just like a weapon, right? You can use it for good, bad. You can use it irresponsibly, all of these things. So yeah, absolutely.
Teddy K can tell us about that one. Rip Uncle Teddy. No, anyway, I have like multiple directions. First, wait.
Can I ask a question? I want to ask a question.
You're asking me for permission?
So this
is very trad wife kind of behavior.
What? No.
Good job.
Yes, you can speak.
Oh my God. Okay.
You lost it.
Yeah. No. So one of the things I think is really interesting, and just having talked about it in the way of using like psilocybin, I work with a shaman teacher, and I'm working on kind of going on shaman journeys, and my teacher is very much, she's like, you don't need that to get to that level, right? You don't need to ingest anything, although it is like ayahuasca's a big trip that happens, right? With healing. A lot of shamans work with psilocybin, ayahuasca, all of these things. And she's really, she's older. So she's like not in that camp. She's more of like, you can do it without. What are your feelings about that? Do you think that you could be at the level that you're at right now, but having not used or ingested anything?
No way in hell. uh, uh, and let me just say, I don't think this is for everybody. I think it's for very few people, actually. There's this thing that we talk about in terms of an OODA loop. It's basically your mind, and it's a fortress, right? Like if you have domain over anything, it's got to be that space between your ears. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people, if they're going to be ingesting these kind of things, they got a lot of baggage to unpack and to deal with. And I honestly, I don't think it's a bad thing to do, but I think under the right pretenses where you're chaperoned, it's in a safe space with the right people.
A guide, right? Like having a guide.
You need a guide. You need no distractions whatsoever. You can't be like, there can't be an emergency that interrupts your trip or any of this kind of stuff. Like this is something that people don't take serious enough. The kids that go out and pop a couple mushrooms before going to a concert or something like that. Like not what I would condone, right? Like maybe I sound old and all that kind of stuff, but I really think this is one of those tools that has to be, used extremely
respected, right?
Yeah, you have to show it the extreme respect. If you do, then you have a really good chance of utilizing. So when I say this, like if anybody is outside of microdosing and you're starting to get into more of the mega doses, which I would just classify as anything above 2 grams of mushrooms, right? I think you need to be extremely careful and under somebody's guidance that knows everything that they're doing. With that being said, if you find yourself being one of those people that can handle these kind of things, maybe there is a calling for you to go deeper, to go bigger. And I don't mean that like you're leveling up. I mean this is, if you're a spiritual warrior and you need to go and you want to go do these things, you want to fight, darkness or demons or whatever you want to call it in a different realm, other than just this plane that we're used to. Yeah, I don't see how you do that without mega doses, right? Like, I mean, for me, I won't tell you how high I've gone. I will tell you in terms of grams, it's double digits. And that is something where you don't get there. I don't think there's any way on God's green earth that you get where that is without some sort of some tool. And I do a lot of meditation. There's a few different types of meditation that are out there where if you're talking about your aura, you're talking about projection, what your vibration is, all these other tools that you can use in terms of projecting those things into reality, into realm, into looking at how your existence is unfolding before you and then manipulating it. So those are all things, but I know long answer to a short question is I don't think you can get there the way these things will get you there. And that's from experience.
I've heard that from other people too. It's just that there's different feelings across the board. All I know is that I have not really done a guided journey, but when I was younger, I rebirthed myself with mushrooms. Like literally, like rebirthed myself. Well, so I mean, who knows?
Well, I have to say, like, thank you, because the last time we talked, you had recommended reading The Immortality Key.
Oh, he loves this book.
So good.
Bro, I haven't even finished it yet. Like, it's been over a year. I read 5 pages and my mind just like fucking explodes.
Tough read, man.
I can't go back to it until I fully kind of like process everything that's going on. And it's like, and you and I speak the same language because we've read a lot, like, as well, kind of like on the political theory spectrum too, right? Like, so that first day that you read Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard, you're like, holy crap, this guy is saying all of these things that I felt all along, but I just didn't really have the words to like, put it out there.
Yeah.
And reading the Immortality Key, I was like, holy crap, this is, and what brought it up the last time we were talking about it was, I was like, you know what? I was born and raised Baptist. I went through a period of my life where I was atheist. Like I completely rejected that part of my upbringing, and I kind of went full scale to the other end of the spectrum. And then I started to come back, and I mean, part of that was also my relationship with Jocelyn, and she's very spiritual, and it kind of started to bring me back in that direction. But I was having a problem rectifying, okay, well, if Judeo-Christian is like one of these, the big organized religions, and there's these other, big organized religions, they're all these like mega brands that are essentially trying to vie for your
That's right.
attention. They're trying to vie for your energy, your money, right? Like everything like that.
All of it.
And at a certain level, I was like, there needs to be something that kind of like pulls this all together. And that freaking book is like, every time I open it, I'm like, holy shit, you are saying things to me that and granted, the author doesn't necessarily come to like a concrete conclusion, but at the same time, it just makes so much sense where, we're big proponents of decentralization. And the essence of that book is how faith and spirituality was always meant to be a personal journey. It wasn't meant to be this centralized journey that went through some kind of like king-like or pope-like figure, right? Absolutely, absolutely incredible. And I'm still working my way through it. But it's like that opened up this conversation for us too, because the moment I started reading that, I was like, shit, I need to find a shaman, and I gotta do like at least like a little bit of this, because the positive stories that have come out of people that have had those experiences where they've had a guided journey like that are just fucking
They're
beautiful.
miraculous. They're literally miraculous.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil the book for you or anybody else out there, but Brian Marascu, the guy that wrote the book, The Immortality Key, first of all, maybe one of the smartest guys like I've ever read in my life. And that book is a tool. Like it is so many different languages, and it is in different time periods, and like when he can take all of these things and weave them into a coherent set of books and principles and stories. And that's the thing, is you will have Aramaic, you'll have Greek, you'll have Italian, Spanish, you'll have the Germanic tribe. You'll have all of these things like within a paragraph where he's referencing and pulling and talking and naming, and it's just this, oh, it's the chef's kiss in terms of like a Indiana Jones meets a mad scientist who understands how to take like old pottery and see what type of chemicals or what compounds they were using in these things, where they were using them in digs. So the amount of work and study and passion that Brian put into this just bleeds through in the pages of the Immortality Key. And it's funny you say, like, it is supposed to be this spiritual, independent spiritual journey that you do with other humans. It's not the dogma.
Yeah.
And that's, we got into this conversation this weekend. We camped out in the back this weekend. I'll just say me, a Navy SEAL, a Green Beret, and a guy that used to be in the Army and the Navy, right? So, as men's men, we were sitting around having these type of conversations. And with that being said, the dogma is what gets in the way. When you go through these events, these what people will call trips, you walk away with something that will continue to affect your life and that you will continue to learn from for a long time. And what we're learning is that, Christo, this understanding of, be light, be love, be the brother's keeper, but also be this warrior, be this, warrior in the garden. And so you've got to be, you've got to be skilled, you've got to be tough, you've got to be self-reliant, you have to be a man's man, a leader of men, in other words, But at the same time, you have to have this open mind and open heart enough to have this bigger experience so that you can start to grow your legacy in other generations so that they can continue to do this and maybe do it even better than we did.
Yeah.
And I think the beautiful thing that I see is from that book, this will be kind of the spoiler, is like they persecuted a lot of people in the Spanish Inquisition just because of drugs, right? Like because of psychedelics. The women who were preparing this, they were the ones who they called witches. And so when they were, preparing the psychedelics for communions and these holy events that they would go to in these decentralized type of places, the witches were the ones who, were the ones who the Spanish Inquisition went after. And then you had Saint Bruno. And Saint Bruno was in the 1600s. He was arguing in the church as a Catholic. I don't even think he was a cardinal. Maybe somewhere high up. But they killed the guy. They literally killed the guy for his argument that you have to keep psychedelics in the communion. So when you look at history and you realize that the church, the Catholic Church, amongst others, was one of the first churches to go out of their way to start banning and othering the people that were using psychedelics. And then you start to see how governments have, put these under Schedule 1 drugs, even though there's no addiction. There's, they have patents on many of the drugs that are there, and you start to see
history doesn't repeat, it rhymes though, right? Like
damn right. And so you start to understand, like, this is a super powerful thing that they don't want in your hands. Why? Well, because if you are one of those people that is that close to God, you've seen beyond like what this is, and you've also had that ego death where now you're not so concerned about yourself as you are, the human species, and where do we fit into this thing on a grand scale? Like, what are we doing as a species? That's one of those things where they don't want you to think like that. That's not prohibited on that 3x5 index card. You know what I mean?
Something that I'm going to stop this for a second because
you're muted. Are you?
No, I just pulled the mute off.
Oh,
yeah. No. Don't say anything untoward. So to the point of, you had brought up the idea of getting to the place of, say, what psychedelics gets you to, but through kind of like natural means, right?
Yeah.
So there are precedents throughout history of different groups that use meditation, but also, so like, for instance, we like watching
even fasting.
We like watching Yellowstone, right? Yellowstone sweat lodges, right? The American Indians use sweat lodges as a way. They would also use, I forget what it is that the character Casey does, where he basically stakes himself under a tree for like 4 days without any food or water, and has somewhat like visions and stuff. So there's actually a precedence also within the immortality key, and like, this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, but believe me, there's going to be so much more, so you don't even have to worry about me talking about this.
Before you say that, it's important to know that you don't have to do that to get to a certain level, because but it's not, probably not as immediate. I mean, it's definitely not as immediate.
It's
a much more refined practice.
What I'm saying is that some people probably need that. Right, because,
and specifically PTSD, where you have such severe trauma that you're actually guided through with somebody.
That, and I think there's a significant amount of training that comes with doing it without the aids, right? And so, like, literally, some people work lifetimes in order to hit some of those psychological states, right? You can accelerate it. So even within the immortality key, the author talks about how the walk to the sacred temple was arduous, and it would go, like, it was a 30-mile walk or whatever that people would make without very much food or water or anything like that. So by the time they get there, they're dehydrated, they're tired, they're overheated, and then you enter into a temple, and it's almost kind of like the appetizer before the meal. You enter into the temple, and then they're burning things that now you're inhaling. And like, before you even get to the main kind of like part of the potentially psychedelic part of the experience, right? And so all of these things kind of like heighten it and heighten it and heighten it and heighten it, right? I would imagine someone can get there without it. The key is what kind of, you mentioned like almost kind of like fasting to get there.
Fasting is a way people do enter into that. I mean, different.
I can tell you, we water fasted for what?
We did 3 days.
Was it 3 days? We water fasted.
You cut me off right before the third day.
Third day, I'm pretty sure I was seeing like chickens fucking get up and walk in front of me like roasted chickens. Like he
couldn't last the last 4 hours.
There was like we could have gone to bed.
We could have just gone to bed and you would have been over 3 days.
I was like, absolutely not. I was like, and like full disclosure, you're supposed to kind of like wean yourself back into having food.
Did not.
I was like a fat kid with cake. I was like, right? Like it was going in my mouth. But that being said, I can tell you that the feelings that I had while we were going through that water fast, add in some other shit. Add in, like sweating and dehydration,
steam rooms or saunas
or like running a long distance or whatever. Like add some extreme scenarios in there. I think you could kind of get to there. I think what Shane's also saying though,
I don't think it's the same feeling.
Yeah, I think what Shane is saying that the accelerants that are within those psychedelics are like getting just a hyper concentrated dose.
Well, I think that's why he's saying too that you have to have your emotional life in balance before you try this kind of amount of megadose, right? Like, but I definitely think you can experience all kinds of things without it. But there's a very specific thing that ayahuasca and like psilocybin do in larger doses, and it's been used forever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like a new thing. What worries me is the government's taking it over. What's it going to turn into? Why are they trying to create things like psychotropic medications?
They've already used it.
But and then they don't,
MK Ultra. What?
I don't want to take time.
Yeah. All right.
It's a whole nother show.
All right, let's get back into it. Something, and this seems like stupid because it's like pop culture, like, right? But
yeah,
what's funny is like we know through things like Project Paperclip and other stuff that stuff has been seeded within the culture that has essentially almost kind of either desensitized us to certain things that they don't want us to pay attention to, or has essentially mocked the marginalizing of certain things. And so, for instance, like in say like the original Dune series, right? Like literally the dude has a freaking psychedelic trip, and that's what makes him kind of like the hand of God, right? And having that within a major like science fiction piece of work, there it could be completely made up, but in the same respect, when you look back at what the Gnostics and the mystics were doing, and essentially how every single person who was of any consequence made a pilgrimage to Eleusis in order to like have this experience. You're like holy shit, this is a remnant of things that used to be, that's essentially been, and we know for a fact that the elites, they change history, right? Like they change the written history. I mean, shit, they burned down the Alexandria library, right? Like who was it the other day? Ace on X was talking about how he was like, he found the Stoics like really cold because they always had this kind of like anti-emotion kind of stance. And I forget who he was talking to, but I responded and I was like, well, we only know about like 99, we only know 1% of what they actually talked about, because 99% of that shit burned down because of the Catholic Church and other, kind of like invaders that took that away from the public record. And so it's entirely possible that this kind of like more open-minded approach that used to exist is something that was relegated, and it's talked about in the immortality key. Like, it was relegated to basically the ash, and we're almost kind of rediscovering it as if it was completely brand new to us. Which one makes me fucking pissed off that we've existed for hundreds and thousands of years without that, right? Like, where could we have been without it? But it also makes it like, as someone who is a believer in natural law and natural rights, it just makes sense. Like you can try to quiet it as long as you want, but it will eventually percolate to the top because it just is, right? Like I thought that's an absolutely fantastic aspect of that.
Yeah, there's some amazing cohesion too, because when you are looking at this as a complementary piece to most religions, right? Like, I could take a Taoist, I could take a Buddhist, I could take a Christian, a Jew, I could take anybody out and do something like this. And this is going to not only, I want to say, reaffirm, but it will grow their understanding of their own faith. And it's not one of those things where like yours is this and yours is that. No, hey, listen, I think what we're talking about as a human species is just a difference in culture and language over eons and eons, right? And so when somebody says meditation, another man says prayer, and when somebody says God, and then somebody's talking about the universe, or somebody's talking about quantum physics, where somebody else is talking about energy projection, and like it's just the idea that any of these things are really separate is, I think, the biggest ruse and divide that there could be. And what this does is it melts all that bullshit away. You just start to see like, oh no, like prayer is kind of a quantum mechanic type of application, and thinking and action and all that kind of stuff. So like keep doing whatever that is. Your vibration, same thing. Like people, the hippie culture, right? Like, you got to change your vibe, man. Well, yeah, you do kind of have to change your vibe. Like, where are you at? There's a great guy that's deceased now, is Dr. Hawkins, not the guy that went to Jeffrey Epstein's island, right?
The one who like the midgets doing the equations up on the chalkboard there.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, sorry, little people. Sorry, little people.
Get canceled.
Their videos where they're on the Instagram shorts, like doing the shot put and everything else, and like olive goes into somebody's like like those or the toothpicks where they're throwing javelins. I love those things. But at any rate,
goodbye, YouTube. It's been a good night.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, guys. But when you look at what Dr. Hawkins did, Dr. Hawkins did this thing called the map of consciousness. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but basically what he does is he takes these different levels and he kind of color codes them, like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, like kind of like the rainbow, right? Like just
almost like aura.
Yeah, he kind of like, exactly, chi, or chakras, or any of these things, right? Like there's a certain frequency that is involved with every one of these. And when he talks about some of the lower frequencies, like grief or shame or guilt or apathy, those are low frequency kind of things, right? Like if you're in those states and you can kind of map these kind of things, you can just look at something on the wall and be like, holy hell, man, like I am way down here and I feel like shit. And obviously, yeah, maybe I am in one of these things. Or if you're looking at anger or desire or fear, another like a step up from the first group, but not great. You're still, you're still low vibration. And then he goes on to talk about like courage kind of being the middle ground, right? Like you're right in the middle is courage. Because when you start to see courage like kind of show its head, and now you've got either you're going to regress into the lower frequencies, or you're going to start to progress into a higher frequencies. It's that taking stock of, what do I have right now? Do I have breath in my lungs? Can I count my blessings? Am I grateful for everything that I have? And so if you can have the courage to put away all that low frequency anger and pride and desire and fear and grief and apathy and guilt and shame, and then start to look upward, right? Like, how am I going to change my frequency upward? This guy did amazing things. I mean, he talks about, willingness and acceptance and love and joy, peace and enlightenment. And so like you can sit there and literally, okay, I need to be way up here. How do I get here? And those things all, are pieces of what we're talking about in terms of spirituality and like growing your vibration, right? This aura that you have that other people come in contact with, and what comes in contact with other people first. So if you can start to steer these things and move these things, and grow them and strengthen them, what you're doing is literally taking your person, your soul, and now projecting it. And that can have amazing consequences on other people's lives, because some people that are walking around at low vibration, they come in contact with a high vibration person, you can change their whole day, right? You can change their minute, their hour, maybe even their lifetime. But like you were talking about, that guy who's the light in the room, I guarantee you that guy was walking around, through transfiguration, maybe illumination. He had peace, he had joy, he had love. He was, he was just a very reasoned person. So like that's one of those places where I, would tell people, if you're struggling with some things, maybe put that thing on your wall and start paying attention to it. It's Dr. Hawkins. It's the map of consciousness, I think is what it's called.
It's interesting because there's a big.
So I'm hitting the pause button here because
we never get to do this because we're live, right?
Yeah.
We never know what's going to come up. But we just looked up the map of consciousness. Is that what it is? Map of levels of consciousness.
Yes. So if I pull up the correct tab here, it's Dr. Hawkins' map of consciousness, or levels of consciousness.
Levels of consciousness.
And I forget. I think you were saying just before we hit pause that maybe talk about it a little bit, but I think a lot of people try and break these things down to kind of like phylogenetics, right? Like trying to get these things all into, that might be the wrong word, but get these things all kind of categorized along that spectrum or whatever.
I mean, I'm sure, like, when you look at this from shame all the way up to full consciousness, like, they definitely resonate. The higher you go, the more open the resonance, right?
Sure.
For sure. But I think my issue with it was, you got to feel through this. You can't avoid grief in your life. You can't necessarily avoid anger in your life. You can be present with it. You can learn it. You can walk through it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But to place it like it almost feels like shaming for those feelings when I look at it. Does it feel like that for you?
Well, no. I don't think you could
like
take
it's
this
under victim abuser.
Yeah, but I don't think you can take this under just isolation, right? So I don't
but
think
like you want to move up.
Yeah,
like you want to kind of do the walk.
And there's no time element here either.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I don't think that leveling up is necessarily like something where you level up and then you never go back down again.
Yeah. But right? Like I get it. Like you kind of want to walk that path up, so that, because each of those as you go, like neutrality, willingness, acceptance, inner light, inner wisdom, inner love, those are all resonating higher and higher. Of course, you want to spend your most time in love and oneness and presence and awareness. Like we all want to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, just take it from, say, like take it from a Buddhist standpoint as well, right? For someone to get to those higher levels of consciousness or vibration, right? It takes a long time. It takes a lot of focus and energy, right? And
sometimes those lower ones are portals to the higher ones.
Well, so
that's another,
like I was saying, there's no time frame in this, right? And so again, we're not familiar.
I'd have to
very in depth with Dr. Hawkins and what he's talked about, but I would imagine that, like, the point on the chart that you're at right now in this moment in time, right? It ping pongs around.
Well,
right?
Apparently, and this is totally off topic, but not, because just because it has fourth dimension, fifth dimension, we're apparently changing timelines. We're in the middle of a timeline shift to go to fifth dimension, or we're in third dimension and we're going to fourth and fifth dimension.
Yeah.
I forget what I had read recently, but there's like a timeline shift happening. So we are actually in the next 3 or 4 years moving into those fourth and fifth dimensions from the third dimension.
See, I'm just kind of like thinking out loud here, but my thought process would be your base state you could elevate. So I know this is getting like super nerdy, but say like most of the time you're like fifth dimension. Right. But something happens in your life where it kind of like, pulls you down, whether or not it's like, grief or anger or something like that. But once you rectify that or clear it, right, you get back to your base state. And then there's other work that you can do to elevate your base state to the point where, like, you know, most of the time you're at a certain
most
level.
light workers have been saying that we've been living in third dimension for a very long. I mean, I don't know if these correlate. But most light workers a lot of light workers have been saying we've lived in third dimension for quite some time. Like people who are working in, I mean, if you could, lots of things that could be light workers, like people who are channels, mediums, working with different higher energies. Like some people, you know, you've heard the light language.
Something to behold.
It is. I like to play with that. So, but they say we've been living in the third dimension.
Yeah.
For a very long time. And right now that timeline shift that's happening is in and out, in and out. So if you're feeling all this energetic kind of punching all the time, like pulling in, punching out, pulling in, punching out, like that's a lot of this shift over the next 3 years that's going to be happening as we shift timeline, dimensions and timelines.
But so that basically speaks to what kind of the external influences, right? It's not that everyone's
everywhere is. That's what I've heard on some level. Not everyone says this, but that we are all moving to either fourth dimension or fifth dimension. You'll be in one or the other.
I'm not inclined to,
but I don't know about that.
I would be more.
I've just listened to a lot of people.
I mean, like just in the here and now, without reading more about it, I would be more inclined to think that even if they're like. If there's accuracy to this and we're like in third dimension or whatever, and we're eventually going to transition to higher level or whatever, is that's kind of the externality. It's not necessarily indicative of the individual.
But it's interesting too that it's called in here new humanity consciousness. So who knows?
No.
Who knows?
Wait, you're talking about 2027
maybe
again?
Dr. Hawkins. Yeah, I think that's a massive shift that's happened. Maybe Dr. Hawkins knows my light worker people.
That is entirely fine. There's a lot of crossover that happens here.
And I think in this time with Shane, that this is where I'm like, I don't really believe that. But I did have a few drinks earlier.
Well, again, I'm not sure we're necessarily having an in-depth conversation about the entirety of this person's work. I think it's more so kind of like
the move to like the destination you eventually want to get to.
Yeah. So like what
ways.
I'm talking about, like, you know, in terms of base state, like whatever you're kind of like, you're familiar with the concept of homeostasis.
Yeah.
Okay. So the nature has a certain kind of balance, right? And so it's always fighting to get back to that, or not fighting. It's always essentially working or existing to get back to that balance or maintain that balance, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can change where that balance point is, right, in your own spiritual life, you could elevate that base kind of like homeostasis level where things will come along.
Slowly climb up, in a sense, those levels of consciousness. And it's not that you won't feel things
that will come along momentarily that could, you know, drag you back down. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily immediately spring back up.
No.
You could spend some time back down there, right? But I can tell you from personal experience that the time we spent after, say, like losing your folks and my dad and, you know, all that stuff that happened, I can say that it became very apparent that my base state was pretty close to all of that shit that was going on and how that was making me feel. Like I was not much higher than that when all of that shit came along. And it just really easily dragged me down. That might also be the other dynamic here is the higher that your base state is within that rubric, it might be like you might come down into grief and then be able to return quicker because of how far away your base state is. Whereas I mean, when everything happened, I was down there, right? Like that was my base state.
Well, I think the only thing that rubbed me wrong about it was I feel like there was like a feeling of like, this is where you want to be, this is where you don't want to be, but also at the same time we've been talking a lot about portals.
Yeah.
And
you're talking about in terms of Hawkins.
And
gradient or whatever.
Shane talking about it. And I feel like those places of grief, and I've talked about it a lot on podcasts, like this idea of grief being a portal. And if we just open, instead of saying, oh, I've got to be over here, I've got to be self-aware, I've got to be this, right? If we actually open up to that experience, you could probably I want to feel like Qbert. I want to do Qbert up the.
Wow. That's like a
well, I was born in
80s video game nerd reference. I am impressed.
But you know, like you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Go ahead, play it again.
I got you.
I know.
Let
I
me
just
ask
blew
you.
your mind.
Let me ask you one final question. Is it possible that both are accurate?
Sure.
All right, that's it. All right, back to the show.
Kind of movement in the spirituality field that's been coming up in the last, I'd say, decade, maybe even more. But this idea of, not just necessarily the courage, but feeling into where you want to be. So like if you want a transformation, feeling what would the feeling be if you had that transformation? And then to build that feeling of gratitude or of joy or of whatever you're looking for, right? And to actually have that like really jump into that feeling and then allow that to expand into your quantum energetic map in a sense, right? And it's Joe Dispenza talks a lot about that, right? Like he talks a lot about that quantum field. And I feel like for about a decade now, people have been really, every time you want to create a change in the spiritual world, I keep hearing this, like being in that feeling. But then there's also a part that rubs me in a strange way, that what you said, and it's just the therapist side of me. And it's the side that goes, okay, we don't want to necessarily jump past things like grief or like anger. They're all kind of, to me, they're all kind of pieces of who we are and their experiences that we've had. And there's maybe a way to go through it rather than maybe push it aside, right? Or push it down. Like, and to ascend from it, right? So, and there's one of the things I always think about when I think about creating changes in life is, okay, everything we feel is a symptom. So if we can see it as a symptom, we can learn from it. And if we can learn from it, we can ascend through it, right? Like this idea of like not necessarily placing a label on a feeling that we have or an experience that we have or a place that we get stuck, right? Like, because everyone's going to get, on a daily basis, we go through these waves of fucking grief or whatever it be, right? Or anger or like frustration. We always go through it. Life is never going to be without that. That's our human experience. That's what we're here to learn and to feel, right? So like we have these waves. And so how can we learn to like be with it, sit with it, try not to change it, to move to it, ascend to it, right? Feel into what we want to be. And I think that's kind of a space where spirituality is really moving to right now. And for a long time, I remember my mom was my mom was one of the original New Agers, I think. What did you say? She was everything's love and joy all the time. But there's a real pull right now to look at the shadow, to look at the other stuff, walk through it. Yeah, with some balls, with some courage, right? You got to look at that shit.
Well, I would say that there's something to like acknowledging it, right? Like I think a lot of people, I mean, like, most people will call them normies, right? Like a lot of these NPC type people that go through life, they're not really even acknowledging the state that they're in, right? Like they're just kind of, wafting from state to state, and it's literally just how the wind blows them, right? And I would say that acknowledging those states is probably where that real kind of like power comes from, because the first piece, like you said, is to acknowledge, you're like, am I at lower or high vibration, right? And then the question then being like, okay, what am I garnering from this, right? And then how do I get to that next place? And some people, it might just be to have a piece of freaking chocolate. Other people, it might be they need to go freaking, chop wood for 6.5 hours until they're freaking exhausted. And they get it out of their system, that's super awesome, powerful stuff, because just that idea of living in the present and being present in your own body is also something that I think people maybe dismiss about some, like when you talk about microdosing or even macrodosing in terms of psychotropics. It's like I think a lot of people think that that's escapism, but really it isn't. It's more so trying to kind of like commune, right, with where you're at and where you want to ascend to, right?
And that's the thing is, as you go up in dosage, you have to be extremely careful, and this is the thing is, you have to be able to protect your thoughts. You have to be able to be that person that can stay on your intention. You take a macro dose and you're not strong minded and you can't stay on target, then you're going to get distracted. And when you get distracted, you can go into some very dark places. And I mean this. I mean, to tell people like, yeah, you know what? If you're going to go in and fight demons, well, you better be ready to glow. Is my thing, right? Is like you have everything that you need in terms of energy to go into dark places and be the light. And I literally mean like vibrate and be the light in these dark places where evil can't. And if that's not your thing and you can't do that, there's nothing you should do. And in terms of escapism, I've never found anything harder, like spiritually harder than going in on these big trips and fighting to that point where like you're just like nothing nothing is going to distract me
Yeah.
from this cause that is peace, that is light, that is love, that you can project into this realm, into other realms, into you know and that's the thing is once you start talking about quantum mechanics and you start to realize that anything that you could possibly even think of, right, in any variation of those, it's just infinite. You're talking about infinite realms, infinite worlds, infinite timelines, infinite everything.
Yeah.
And so if you can be one of those people that can walk amongst all of that, fight off the darkness from all of those places, and that is not like you're not God, but what you're doing is now you're channeling another part, right? You're channeling a designer. And this might be one of the coolest things that I've discovered is when you go through these things, you kind of grow, you kind of look at things from the inside out. You start with something that is very just primal in your body, right? You start with your that mind. And as you start to conquer that space, and then you start to get outside of yourself, and you have this terrifying, like absolutely like, oh my God, the duality of man, like everything that is will never be again, and all, and at the same time is right. And you're like, oh, this is too much. But as you start to see the outside world and you start to see like the smallest design in some of nature, whether it's a flower or a plant or a bacteria, mold, something that's growing on a rock or the rock itself, and you start to just kind of come outwards in these moments, and you start to see, what the world really is and how amazing the design is and how it all works together. And you're just sitting there like, when you take the minute or what the hours to behold what creation is, it's not escapism. You're so tapped into something so much bigger, a grand design, somebody who designed like a smarter intelligence, where you go, yeah, you know what, you did something pretty amazing here. I submit. I literally submit to whatever you are, the good, the bad, you know, I don't understand it, but it's not for me to understand, right? Like that's not escapism. That's coming to a very stoic conclusion, kind of like you were talking about earlier, which I agree. Like Stoics were absolutely divorced of a lot of emotion. However, that's what comes with it. It comes with emotion. I see just, man, I've seen the toughest dudes I've ever met weep, just weep in this realization and joy and beauty that they're beholding because of these types of experiences. And that's something that is so powerful. And it's part of why, the PTSD thing works here, is because you go, get over yourself, right? Like get over it. Start being, the best version that you can be of yourself, and start thinking about other things and other people. And I think that's the big takeaway there is, yeah, there's no escapism. If anything, it's hyper real across not only this world, but all others.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? When you microdose or macrodose, do you go with is your guide more of a spiritual, or is it like a therapist type person that guides you on your journeys?
So I've really taken over the guiding. when I first began, I had a guy that I would consider a shaman. He hated, like no shaman likes to be called a shaman, I don't think. But this guy was the guy that kind of, hey, these are the rules, right? Like, you will start here. You will not increase by over this amount. You don't have to increase at all. Find, if you find this is you're comfortable or this was enough, then leave it. And this is not like, we're not trying to outdo each other here. This is for you and you alone. So yeah, no, I do most of the guiding these days. And so when I go, whether it's by myself out into the wilderness or I take a group of guys with me out into the wilderness and we go for one of these things, yeah, I do the guiding and, have people at different levels, prepped for this, what they're going to be doing. And that's obviously something you learn through a lot of experience. Yeah.
Interesting too, because just thinking about how like psychotropic drugs, how the pharmaceutical companies have kind of taken over with a lot of the drugs they give people now that are, psychotropic for different reasons, for different diagnoses, right? And yet mushrooms are illegal in most places. They're illegal. Are they illegal here?
Yes.
They are illegal here in New Jersey.
Actually, I think they're just starting to
beginning.
push through, like, I mean, you know how the fucking government works.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You have to have a prescription, right, for it or whatever, right? Like, I think that's an awesome segue, because one of the things that you came out with one of the last episodes that you did with the vets was talking about what you've kind of mentioned previously, is this kind of light warrior versus these kind of like dark warriors that are working. And what's crazy is, everyone uses the Matrix analogy or whatever, but what's crazy is when you do start to kind of wake up, you whether or not you kind of identify it as such or not, you do start to see these kind of like light and dark actors, right, that are influencing the world around. And there definitely seems like there is I don't want to be like too like over aggrandizing or whatever about like what I'm saying, but it definitely seems like that there are people that are not working for the light side of the equation, right? Like they are very much so trying to either bottle that up and just keep it for themselves, or even trying to snuff it out, which is really fucking scary. Like and regardless of how you see it, like, again, we make the point on this show that, like you said, you can call prayer or meditation, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
There's like a similar crossover, right? So like whatever you want to call them, you want to call them the good guys and the bad guys, you want to call them, centralizers versus decentralizers, whatever you want to call them. At the core of it, they're essentially trying to take something beautiful and good, and they're trying to manipulate it to their own end. And it ends up corrupting it, right? Like it ends up making it dark, or at the very least attempting to make it dark. And so, like, how did you really come to this kind of like light warrior? I know, like, you just kind of threw it out and you're like, guys, I think you're gonna think I'm crazy, but like, I think we need some light warriors to go in and do some fucking work, right?
Yeah.
I do you think that that's just purely on kind of like this quantum physics level, or do you think it also plays out in the physical realm in the here and now?
I think it's a combination. By all, yeah, because what we believe, what we think, what we say is energy, right? And like energy has this way of manifestation, and you don't have to look any further than like cymatics, right? If you look at the building blocks of the world and cymatics and what different shapes and everything else represent out there, you start to see like this stuff is all moving. It's all moving in a very coordinated mathematical way. And so that energy is what, I think probably is thought. It's thought, it's ideas, it's speech, it's movement, it's all of these things that we just all naturally do that we've, I think, been deprived of, right? Like this study of how powerful your mind is. There are things that have transcended a lot of time and space in terms of being passed down from generation to generation. When we were growing up in the 80s, I think, my mom and dad, hey, you can do anything you put your mind to. And that was just something I think that they said that I don't know if they really believed how really powerful that was.
Yeah.
I think that comes from a very powerful place from our ancestors. They're like, no, hey, listen, you can do whatever you think you can do. But yeah, in terms of the whole light warrior thing, I kind of threw it out there as like, oh yeah, like just very, it's just very literal, right? Like I need guys to go in and do this kind of stuff. I need guys to go in
do this stuff.
like
I'm just saying I'm having visions of a bunch of astrally projecting fucking Marines marching on the Federal Reserve, right? Like
well, and that's the thing is we don't even need that, right? It's like I just need guys to go in there and think about, well, how do we do this non-violently even, right? Like, how do we do this? Like, how would Christ do this? Christ would just say, expose them. Show me the truth. Show me how wicked these people are. And I think to your point earlier, yes, I think that at the highest levels, they've kept this technology for themselves. We know they've been studying it. We know that it has been involved in everything from the highest levels of the DoD here in America, not to mention all the bureaucracies. We know for an absolute fact that the Catholic Church has known about this kind of stuff for thousands and thousands of years. If you think that they deprived the common population of something like this for anything other than nefarious, dark, self-gratifying reasons, I think you're probably selling yourself a little short. I think these guys have been doing some extremely dark things with this for a very long time. And that's what I say, like there's a dark side to this tool. And I believe these guys have been, had full access to it for an extremely long time.
Well,
I think
just look at the yin and yang of things, right? Like a perfect example would be the nuclear bomb, right? Like the discovery of nuclear energy had the potential to provide literally clean energy to billions on the planet.
That's right.
And the people that discovered it, or at least controlled the people who discovered it, they chose to use it for destruction, right? And this plays out time after time after time. Like I hate continually going back to like pop culture references, but one of my favorite movies is Real Genius, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just the idea that someone brilliant could discover something that is at the essence of what we're talking about, right? Or some facet of it. And then someone in power could then essentially corrupt it and use it for the negative side of that versus the positive. I mean, just speaks to the fact that you need like an equal and opposite reaction. Like there needs to be something that at least maintains the balance.
We were just talking about it with CERN the other day. I was like, because for the God particle, right? That's it. And I'm like, what if Bill Gates got the God particle? Like that would be fucking hell. No, like it's all great to know where it comes from, right? But whose hands does it fall in? Like that's the idea.
Yeah, and I think, they're at a deficit no matter what, right? Because wherever you can shine light, darkness cannot prevail. And that's that's the amazing thing about this is it can be totally asymmetric odds. You can have an entire, papistry over there that prays in darkness. You can have, and I mean this like from a guy that used to be Catholic, if you look at what's going on in the Catholic Church and their giant snake building, with everything, and if you haven't seen it, just go Google, like, I don't know, what is this? God, I forgot the official name of it, but the Snake Auditorium in the Vatican is
just like a snake auditorium.
Yeah, I mean, this giant wooden sculpture behind them that looks like the demons of hell and a serpent rising behind the throne which the priest sits on in the snake's mouth.
Dude, someone. All right, so I'm gonna out myself as a giant freaking nerd right now. So I used to do like a lot of online video gaming when I was in college, and so I developed a lot of long distance friendships.
Yeah.
From that, right? And so we have a group of people that are still connected on Facebook. And when the pictures came out about that, there was literally memes that were immediately generated in the group that was like, I've been video gaming for way too long, because when I see this picture, my inclination is like, I need to attack the Pope, because like the Pope is sitting in the middle, and then people then respond, they're like, no, dude, just hold the Pope at bay. We got to kill the 2 healers that are sitting on either side of him. Like,
Yeah.
It is it's unnerving, but you know, like just talking about this just makes me think of, like, I don't know if you've ever like listened to a lot of Bob Marley, but Bob Marley totally talked about freaking shining a light on, you know, that darkness, because it basically can't exist in the light. And there's just so many places right now that need that light, and it's like, you know, we have to recruit as many people, and regardless of what you call it, again, I'm like, I see a lot of this divisiveness that happens, like you know, Jocelyn talks to me all the time about you know, like the spiritual community. A lot of the spiritual community, it's a very diverse community, but also I think a lot of people that were maybe more so like on this kind of like conservative political spectrum are relatively new, whereas a lot of the people that were existing within those circles for a long period of time were these very kind of progressives that I think evolved from the hippies, right? Like of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And
much more open.
well, they were, but you could actually see the corruption happen over time, where those movements got co-opted to the point where these people who were saying that they were like natural and holistic and stuff like that, they were all like, during COVID, they were all like, oh yeah, get your shot and stay apart from each other and mask up and all this other stuff. And you're like, wait a minute, weren't you the person that was freaking rolling in the mud at Woodstock and freaking like, you know, like kissing strangers and stuff? Like, how are you like even saying this stuff right now? And it really is this corruptive force that's kind of, you know, needs some resistance that it's coming up against, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there.
All right.
So the picture.
I gotta show this picture. This is all right. Hold on. I gotta take the screen share off.
I hadn't seen this picture. I'm not involved in
it. It was a meme the moment this thing hit. Hold on. Is this it? Vatican snake room? What's the? I need the full size picture.
There it is. There it is.
Bro. What the F? What the hell is going on here, man? Is this supposed to be like, you know, Jesus saving the lost souls? Is this what this is supposed to be? Or
I don't know. It looks like from Greek mythology to me when I look at it.
There's some like Hades,
right? Like some kind
shit
of
going on here.
Yeah, the army of darkness. That's what it looks like to me. And it's like, even if that is Jesus Christ, it doesn't look like him.
I don't know who it's supposed to be. I haven't read the.
If anyone knows, let us know
in the comments. Do you know what the fuck this is? Because this is like it looks like skulls and bodies and tormented souls.
To me, it looks like out of Greek mythology.
And you got the Pope sitting in front of it, like the head of it. I mean,
are there like birds in there?
There's definitely some wing-like structures. I know that.
There's like demons.
It also looks very tortured. Like, that's not a very happy.
Well, the church has never. Don't you love the Eddie Izzard stuff from the church?
Oh my God.
The church has never been.
Yeah.
It has never been a place of, you know, or at least the more, I don't know, the Pope-like ones. I mean, I know I went to. I was confirmed Catholic.
Yeah.
It was not a joyous place. Although now, like with the liquid church, it's become a little bit different.
Oh, I know what you're talking about with Eddie Izzard. Dude,
the singing.
If no one's familiar with pre-sex change Eddie Izzard, okay? He used to be a transvestite.
Yeah, he was still a transvestite.
And he was specifically a business transvestite. Yeah. Now he's all in on being trans.
I still love him.
Whatever. I mean,
yeah.
his comedy sucks, by the way. It's like
no, but back then it was
back then it was fantastic. Funny. So I would equate it to like Dennis Leary stopped doing cocaine. His comedy went from funny to being shitty. Eddie Izzard went from being a transvestite to fully trans. And regardless of whether it's related or not, he was really funny, and now it's just not funny. So anyway, he's also very ugly. But anyway, he just is. he just is. I gotta
But
call it like it is.
You know the bit I'm
He's
talking
got
about.
money. He can make
when he
himself
sings
look nice,
like he sings like the priest.
Yes. So no, he talks about how the difference between religions. So he talks about how, like, you know, in most like kind of like white Judeo-Christian churches, it's like when they sing, they're like, oh, la, la, right? And then he was like, in the kind of like the black churches where like people have undergone like slavery and oppression and harm, and they're like da 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 da, like it's like, you know, actual celebratory.
But see, that's the that picture.
This is the epitome of blah blah. Hold on, I gotta put this back up again.
One more time, if anyone knows
this shit. Oh my god!
Because I don't know where this kid. I literally just saw this for the first time.
Who looked at that and was like, "This is a good idea"? Like, I mean, and all the Cardinals got to stand up there in front of it and be like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea." Like,
I think it might be telling us the truth.
The truth of what?
Religion.
You call the Pope the Antichrist? Because it's. I mean,
am I not allowed to say that?
Could be. I don't know.
Say that.
I mean, so we touched on it a little bit in this, and we're gonna dig into this further in the future. But the idea of mainstream religion, I think a lot of people hold their religion very closely. I might even mention it coming up in the video, but a lot of people have also turned to religion because they've had their reality shaken.
I've said right? That's what you're coming to. Is I was talking about, and I didn't say it. We didn't say it, but I was talking about Russell Brand.
Yeah.
And how he's kind of wants to be baptized, or
he went like fully into the religious realm.
But he's also a 12-step person who kind of is given that.
But at one time, he was talking about like a lot of I would call it just kind of spirituality, not necessarily specific religion. Does. And then he just went full on like
he's still
organized
he's still
religion.
He's still talking about Wim Hof and his other spiritual people, but I think he's craving something.
Yeah.
And I think, and I've noticed it, like just even in some of the groups I'm in, is this all of a sudden every like meditation is opening the doors for the demonic, or this is opening the doors. Creativity is demonic if it comes from anywhere other than just something that comes out.
Sitting there and closing your eyes and thinking for 20 minutes is opening the portal to demons.
This is something I've been hearing a lot lately, and I'm not sure where it comes from.
So we're gonna kind of break this down into the future.
Yeah, we got to do that.
But I gotta say that it's come up once in this talk before. And it'll come up again when you see us more in the future. Mainstream religion is very much a product of thousands of years of marketing. Okay. And that's not to say that the core components of those religions are wrong.
And we love many religious people. It's not that you don't and that core.
Yeah.
It's that core that almost all religions have in common.
Well, like we talked about it earlier in this interview.
Organized part.
You might call it different things, but there are people across all kinds of different faiths and spiritualities that do similar stuff, and they have similarly positive results, right? And so I think the divisiveness comes down to like, well, this is us and this is them. Like we meet on a Saturday and they meet on a Sunday, and that's what makes them great and us awful, or us great and them awful, right? Like there's these arbitrary dividing
whatever.
Oh,
the Christmas witch.
That's such a random. We have like children's stories that come out of like the bargain bin
stories,
and they're not widely popular. Like what is it called? The Christmas
Witch.
Christmas Witch.
The Valdoons and the Pepperwills.
I don't know who has kids and who
it's a
reads
book
about the Christmas Witch to them, but
we have like 18 books on the Christmas witches.
But so that being said, there's tons of people out there who are religious who would even listen to this, this podcast, this episode, and be like, oh, well, they're against what I believe in, that kind of thing. And really the answer is no, we're not. Like there are so many core things that are
values
shared between these, almost kind of like when we were talking about kind of the crystalline structure aspect of things and crystalline resonance. There are these things that are just kind of, they're natural, they're ubiquitous, right? The idea of meditating and visualization and prayer and whatever you call it, there have been times throughout history by all kinds of different, even evolutions of man, whether you believe in that or not, that have done similar things. They've looked into the fire and seen things, or they've taken time to breathe and be with the ocean, or whatever it is, right? All of these things are unifying, and yet somehow we've gone through thousands of years of people that have a vested interest in teaching us that no, we don't have those things in common. If anything, we're very different from each other, and therefore we should fight with each other and not trust each other and all these other things. And it's very important. I mean, like, you get situations like this where all of a sudden this institution, being the Catholic Church, so that a lot of people put their faith in, puts up this. I mean, look, I gotta be honest. It looks demonic.
It looks demonic. It looks like it's from Hades,
right? Like,
right? That's what that, or yeah.
I mean,
it's very strange.
You know what was the other thing I thought about? Was it looks like something out of, what's the book where the 7 deadly sins are written about?
No.
I can't remember the book title. If you know it, throw it into the comments. But the title of the book where the 7 deadly sins are talked about, I mean, it waxes of something similar to that, where it's like that kind of imagery.
I was thinking to the I'm totally blanking today.
I want to say Dante's Inferno.
That's what I was thinking.
Is it Dante's Inferno?
Dante's Inferno.
It might be Dante's Inferno.
That's what I was thinking. Dante.
Yeah.
It's
probably something from Dante or similar author. But
it is very dark.
It's
very dark.
It's dark and it's unnerving.
It's unnerving, and it's definitely not joyful.
Yeah.
Even with that guy,
it's not higher resonance.
It's definitely lower.
Yeah.
It's in the little tip of the levels of consciousness.
You know what's also interesting is I was raised in the Baptist church. In the Baptist church, like, a good portion of the message that's imparted is, like, if you don't live a godly life and get saved and that kind of thing, that you basically burn in hell for all of eternity, right? I gotta say, it looks like there's some people burning in hell in that structure sitting behind the Pope, right?
That was the first time I saw it too.
I'm still laughing to myself thinking about someone being like, if I saw this like mob in a MMORPG, like, I'm like, you guys tank the Pope and I'm gonna kill the healers. It was absolutely fantastic. So anyway,
back to our video.
Yes, back to the video.
Interview. Yeah.
Oh, I gotta put the share screen back.
You gotta make sure the sound is on.
Yes. Where is it?
I don't know. You've put so many things on there.
Oh my god, I lost it. Where did it go? Oh, here it is, right here.
Yeah, right. Holy shit! I mean, let's go. So, in this blackness, there are people who do shadow work, right? Like real shadow work, and what they're doing is, I mean, you can look around and you can start to see it unraveling a bit. We don't really have a ton of details, but in terms of the Jeffrey Epsteins or the P. Diddy's and these people that will run blackmailing rings on some of the most powerful people out there, why would somebody do something like that? Well, when you control the banks and you control fiat culture because you can print the money, you don't give a shit about laws, right? Like, at some point you can control damn anybody you ever wanted to control. You just need to make them rich. Hey, listen, we've got this compromising video of you doing this kind of thing. We would like you to do this. Now, if you do this, you're going to be set for absolute life. And the more things you do that we agree with, our ESG bullshit, our DEI bullshit, the COVID bullshit, like all of these things that we need you to do, that you jump through hoops, man, pay's coming. Don't worry about it. You're going to be super fat, super comfortable. Don't worry about it. We got you taken care of. And that is literally some of the evilest, I should say the evil, the most evil. Boy, Shane, that was great. The evilest.
That was the J. Edgar Hooverist of
there
of
it
techniques.
Is. Yeah, and so when you see all this stuff coming to light and you understand, what these people have been doing for an extremely long time and who the big players are and how they're connected to, some certain people that you can't talk about, because if you do, then all of a sudden you're anti whatever it is, or, like I hate to say it, but damn it, like it's one of those things that it's very, very real. And you just need to look at the higher echelons of everybody and see who they bow down to. There are certain people that bow down to bankers, and those people are royalty. They are at the top of religious, organizations around the world. They don't give a damn about anything else except for the money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's
fiat
interesting.
culture.
You guys were talking about light before, like needing to bring the light. And I just read this quote the other day: the closer you are to the light, the longer the shadow it casts. And I was just thinking about that idea. The closer you get to like really making a movement, right? Or really moving in a direction that is, I guess light would be the best word, is the longer the shadow, like the harder it gets, the closer you get.
Oh, I'm sure there's,
like the more you get.
I'm sure there's an event horizon, right?
Yeah.
Like
and then
you have to hit critical mass, like to kind of like, continue with
the work you did.
the like wormhole kind of idea, right? Like, I mean, you have to hit a certain level, and again, natural law, like this plays out in a multitude of different places. Like when we were doing the Bradley method, when I don't know if you and your wife ever went through the Bradley method, but it's like a natural birth method. And they essentially tell you that like the hardest it gets is right before the end, right? Like it is literally the getting to the pinnacle of the mountain is that last little bit is the hardest bit, right? Like and it gets echoed somewhere, like tons of other places. I've heard like Tony Robbins talk about it. Again, I don't know Tony Robbins, whether he's a light warrior or a dark warrior, but like, I mean, he even talks about, the practice of, kind of like refining things by a few, like 1 inch, right? Like he talks about golf when he talks about it, but he was like, literally the difference between a significant improvement is that last little inch of being able to fine tune that thing and get it in there.
Yeah.
And you have to hit that sweet spot. Anything off from there, and you might have a little bit of success, but it won't be nearly as close to that last dramatic, kind of like perfect hit, so to speak. And I think we're kind of like we're steadily approaching that event horizon, because there's so many things that are going on right now that are, coalescing, right? I mean, like, I know you're big time into Bitcoin, right? We can talk Bitcoin another time, because I really think you need to diversify. But anyway, but just the idea of decentralized finance and crypto and blockchain and transparency of data and things like that. That is just one element of so many other things that are happening right now.
Coming to a head, kind
of. That, and I don't know if we talked to you about 2027 the last time we spoke, but this idea that there is in human design this kind of this shift, this tectonic shift that's supposed to happen in 2027, where the globalists, the centralizers of power, the dark archons, so to speak, will begin losing that control, because we will move more towards this decentralized kind of more community-based local power structure, or at least not even power structure, just
there's a great book on this. It's called The Price of Tomorrow. It's by a guy named Jeff Booth that I'm friends with, and he's a hell of a Bitcoiner, first and foremost. But what he talks about is exactly what the precipice is, right? Is like we were talking about bankers and how most extremely powerful people still bow a knee to the bankers, right? Like if the king of England is sitting there getting pushed in the chest by Lord Rothschild, and the Pope does bow to Lord Rothschild and kiss the ring and things like that, you're looking at, okay, how do we take this away from them? And I know we don't want to get too far in the weeds of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is one of those things that does exactly this. But in the bigger sense, the decentralization of finance, in terms of taking it out of any person's hands or any group of people's hands, and now having a single set of rules for everybody to play by. In The Price of Tomorrow, Jeff talks about, well, governments are going to have to change. Governments are actually going to have to provide services that people want to pay for, because they're not going to be able to take their money.
Yep.
And if you can't take money and you can't inflate money, your two means of taxation are literally gone because violence has no return now. So you're minimizing violence. You're also getting rid of things like the warfare state, which obviously we all can't stand. But yeah, you're exactly right. And I think that pendulum's already swinging. I think, we're starting to see gains on our side again, even with the ridiculously lopsided asymmetric, war that we're in, right? Like we don't have the media. Well, like the media was never ours. It was always their propaganda machine. We never had the printing press. We don't have the banks. We don't have Congress. We don't have the Senate. We don't have the presidency. We don't have the judges. We don't have the bureaucracies. We don't have any of this stuff.
Yeah.
What we've got is barely some Twitter.
Yeah.
And some stuff that we do as a remnant out there. And then for us on the Bitcoin side is like, now we have this decentralized revolution going on in money that is absolutely kicking the shit out of everything that has ever been money in the past, right? Like we haven't ever had real pure money. Like we've had concepts of trust and trade where, fiat was it for a while. Before that, gold and silver, hard metal standards. If you go back in history, you'll find things like shells and these giant stones from some islands and things like that. But we've never actually had a truly scarce understanding of pure money. And so now that that's starting to occur, and I work, in Bitcoin, so I see this every day. Banks are insolvent. And they are losing more and more and more of their wealth every day to this code that's been put forth. And that's an amazing thing to see. It's an amazing thing for, people to be like, listen, man, I grew up in this fiat system and it sucks so much that I will learn this completely new thing and go that way for the revolution.
How you just put that. So he's had me on with other Bitcoin people and I don't get it. Like, I'm like, I don't understand it. Like, I will try and they will explain it to me. But what you just said was super exciting. Like how you just put it was like, it was the revolution. Like you kind of stated it like the revolution for the people who are not, kind of within all these other camps. That was awesome. You should definitely say that all over the place.
Yeah,
I say it.
He gets paid to. Don't worry. Probably in Bitcoin.
I honestly believe it though. Like I work in Bitcoin for a reason. It's because I get to help people become self-sovereign.
Yeah. It is all right. I have like a hard stop in a couple of minutes, but like this conversation could go on for like hours and hours. So we can ask him a couple of different questions.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to ask him about grounding sheets?
Oh, we have a grounding sheet that we're gonna try tonight. We unfortunately live in New Jersey where ticks are all over the place, and so I don't go out barefoot anymore. In the just last night, I woke up to a tick.
Huh?
Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah.
We literally had a tick on my daughter's arm this morning. I was like, I can't do it. It's only April.
Yeah, no, we have
I went off on a tangent.
I can diverge into ticks and Lyme disease and biological warfare. And actually, ironically enough, but that being said, yeah, so you had actually either you or someone else on the last broadcast had brought up grounding sheets.
Yeah.
And it was something that I had never heard of.
I had. I just hadn't done it.
But you had heard it. And so yeah, we have one and we're like
tonight
about to start that. I guess I'll call it experiment.
Do you think they're safe for dogs? Can dogs go on them?
Well, yeah.
Right?
What's your experience been with them?
So I started grounding on the mountain out here, and I mean that by kind of accident. Like we went out, I took the kids out, we were camping. I had one of the guys that was my shaman with me, and this was kind of an induction for my kids. It was like, hey, let's go and be men and like eat bear, and at the same time like get our own water and filter it, and you guys need to survive out here this weekend. So we went out there and we slept on this mountain, and I was hurting. This was October. I had 2 surgeries and almost died from a spinal infection earlier in the year. And so like by the end of this night, I was like, man, like no tents. We're sleeping on the ground. This is, it's October in Georgia. Beautiful night. Don't get me wrong, like in the 40s. So we had sleeping bags, and I was like, I'm just gonna be tired in the morning. That's what it's gonna be. Man, I hit that ground and I slept like a baby. And it was hard. It was one of those things where the ground was extremely hard. But what happened is my body that was harboring like all this tension started to release some tension. And I went to sleep. I slept great. I woke up feeling better than the day before, which was not, like this was the last thing I thought was going to happen. And I looked over at my shaman and I was like, dude, there is something magical about this place. And I told him I felt better. And he goes, you know why? And I was like, I don't. And he goes, because you were grounded all night long. And I was like, talk to me. Right. Like, tell me about this. And so he says, you need to go learn about grounding. You need to go study up. And so I did. And basically if you're looking at this from bottom line up front, what grounding does is it takes your electromagnetic field and it drops it down to about 0. And when it does that, it puts you in resonance with the earth frequency, and that frequency stops inflammation. And inflammation is the number one cause of chronic disease, period. So if you can stop inflammation 8 hours at a time while you sleep or whatever it is, while you're in your bed, in your rejuvenating state. Now, what you're doing is allowing your body to heal. And if that's probably the biggest thing out of it. I started grounding, and within 3 days, the medications I was on for my back at that time, gabapentin, I had a muscle relaxer, and I was probably smoking, something every night for pain relief. 3 days later, nothing. Cold turkey, gone. Right.
This is not the first time I've heard this. This is like across the board stories too. Like this is.
And I won't say I don't have to work at it, but like when I would get out of bed in the morning prior to, it was just like I had to like wait and kind of stand up slowly, and I was off balance, and like I had to allow my psoas and my iliacus and everything to release, because there was so much guarding and so much tension because of the trauma in the back. And after that, I would stand up and I would literally be steps into the bathroom on my way to the toilet in the morning, right? Like, and it would dawn on me like, oh my God, you don't have any pain. Like you're getting up, like you're in your teens again, and you're walking and you're going to the restroom and you're fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was no less than amazing. I mean, and since then, we continued to use them. I've shared them with my family. I've shared them with friends. I've shared them with guys I do jujitsu with, and they're all like, man, I don't know if it's just a placebo or if this thing actually works. But it's maybe something not quite as anecdotal for you guys. Like between me and my brother, we don't get together and drink very often, but there are, sometimes when it's a special occasion and, beers start opening and you have 3 instead of 2. And, what, after 40 years old, what beer does to people, right? It just makes it inflames everything. And then the next day you hurt everywhere. We had maybe 4 or 5, 6 beers that day. And the next morning we both woke up, he on his sheets and me on my sheets, and I didn't hurt. I'm not saying that this is always going to be the case, but I will,
your own caution.
I will tell you right now, I would attribute it probably to the fact that we were sleeping on grounding sheets, and it kept the inflammation out. It helped us process everything and move through that instead of, feeling like a bag of ass the next day.
Yeah.
Well, like even just think when you're a kid, you're running, like when I was a kid, at least in the early 80s and late 70s, I was always barefoot running everywhere. And the amounts of so we were just walking in the woods the other day. And so asphalt is something that you can't ground in, but concrete you can. Yeah. But all of our paths are asphalt. Like everything that's nature around us that has a fucking path is asphalt. So it's like, it's so hard to find other than our yards. And gosh darn it, the ticks are everywhere. We're too close to Connecticut. We're was it Lime Island? I don't even know where the government started it all.
Dude, on that note, I did the pause button. First of all, your pronunciation as fault.
As fault.
As fault.
It's so unique watching our own podcast back. Usually we just do it, and now I get to witness myself.
This is fantastic. We can heckle ourselves. This is awesome. So you had mentioned
a week later
you wanted to give an update.
Yeah, it's a week later.
Yeah.
We have been sleeping on the grounding sheets for a week. Are you telling me to be quiet?
No. Oh. I'm saying, so what's your
I know what's your
result?
I will say this.
Yeah.
Our dogs fucking love it.
Yeah.
Magra, who is our puppy, well, she's like 1 and something. And she usually wakes up at 4 in the morning every day. She sleeps till 8.
Yeah.
You wake her up.
Yeah,
she has to wake her up.
It used to be she was my alarm clock, regardless of whenever I would set my alarm for. She would wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. Now
she's like,
she will lay on that bed
and it started the day that we started the grounding.
Yes.
It's like, it's that day is when she started.
So now, outside of the dogs, have you had any personal kind of like feeling or sensation or anything like that?
I have found that I am sleeping less. Like I set my alarm for 7.
Yeah.
And I wake up fucking awake at like 5:36.
Yeah.
And sometimes I go back, I just lay down and chill out till my alarm goes off. And that's been really nice. And I'm still on the grounding sheets. But I'm finding that I am like, I should fucking use that. I should fucking get up and do shit.
Yeah.
Like I could literally at 5:30 get up and do shit, but I can also lay back down and chill out and fall back asleep. It's like a really interesting place. I have noticed I have not woken up with my hand numb at all from Piper sleeping on my arm, so my 7-year-old sleeps on my arm and I will get like numb fingers from it because she's not, she's not tiny. And I haven't had that.
Yeah.
I haven't had any problems with my shoulder or my elbow. And I had, I a few years ago, I dislocated my elbow. So it always gets tense and sore.
Yeah.
When I sleep in certain positions, I haven't had that. I feel like I've been sleeping well. And I've been taking, because I guess I'm getting up a little early, I have been laying down middle of the day. And I have had some wonderful meditations on the grounding sheet.
The first night that so the way it works is whether or not you have a full grounding sheet or ours is like a one size fits all that kind of like lays across the bed.
Yeah. In the middle.
Regardless of what it is, it has a single cable that plugs into the ground port in your electrical outlet.
Ours is stainless steel. I did a lot of research. And so the silver ones don't last as long. The stainless steel, we had a stainless steel. We can just get it from Sweden.
So the first night that I laid down on them, the sheet kind of cuts across the bed about, say, like calf
bottom third
to
2/3,
like calf to thigh, like just above the knee. I had almost kind of like buzzing in the bottom of my feet.
I felt that too for the first 3 or 4 nights.
Right.
Like almost like not pins and needles, but it wasn't uncomfortable.
No.
But you could feel it.
It was actually kind of soothing
on the edges of your skin.
Yeah.
It was like almost like the outside side of your skin.
Yeah. And I can say the last week, I haven't been really good on the health side of the equation during the day, but sleeping, it hasn't made as much of an impact on my life as it was the weeks prior, because I think, like regardless of whether or not I have a couple of drinks during the day before I go to sleep, or whether or not I've been like dehydrated and haven't been drinking enough. By the way, I'm drinking a gallon of water a day now, which is why I've probably left the office like 2-3 times to go to the bathroom. But regardless of how like rough I've been on my body, it has been like regenerative. Like it's a rejuvenation to lay down in the bed at night and go through a cycle of sleep with the grounding sheets.
We haven't really talked to Piper about it, our 7-year-old.
Yeah.
But she knows there's something there, but she doesn't know what it is. Do you think she's fallen asleep easier lately? I feel like she falls asleep easier.
I think she falls asleep easier, and
she's a manifester, so she does not fall asleep easy.
She was a little stuffy the other night, but
so this is the thing with grounding sheets too. They can detox you in the first week.
Yeah.
So it's possible that she's been detoxing, which is why she's stuffy, or she could have just picked up something. But it could be that.
She could also be. But my genetics and it's spring and stuff sucks.
But she slept soundly even with being so stuffy last night.
Yes.
So I think it's been a good experiment. I have enjoyed them. I've actually gone on to nap or lay down in the midday just to take a rest. I put the grounding sheet in. I would recommend it.
I would recommend it.
How would you had that numbing on your hand? Are you still having that?
I'm having soreness because I'm starting to get back into more kind of like physical labor type stuff.
But numbness?
But I haven't had any numbness.
Because that was like you were waking up in a lot of pain.
Yeah. So when I'm doing a lot of woodworking and stuff or work outside, particularly my right elbow gets inflamed, which causes numbness lower down in my hand because of the nerves being pinched essentially further up the trunk. And I haven't had that recently. So again, that's anecdotal because
now the question is,
it's not consistent. But
if we were to move the sheet towards our heads, well, then our dog wouldn't get it. But if we were to move it up toward our heads, would it change how we experience? I'd have to look into that. Would it change how we experience? This is a question.
I don't know. Maybe
we'll experiment before next week.
Yeah. All right. Let's we got like 10 minutes left in the interview.
This was a long interview.
It was long, but it was absolutely fantastic.
So good.
Here we go. We can get deeper into that one too. No. We are pro placebo effect, Shane.
Yeah, let's go for it. Whatever. If it works, it works.
I really you can correct me all day long about the science, all this other stuff. You know what? I feel good. Fuck you. I don't care.
At the science at the end of the day, the studies do show like the moment you touch it, it starts to change brain waves, right? And you can start going into theta much easier, which is going to help you rest. It does take your natural electrical field and drops it almost to nothing as soon as you touch it.
For tonight.
Yeah, you can touch it with the voltmeter and see it. You'll get deeper sleep. Your muscles are going to relax faster. It is. Yeah, I need a sponsor for grounding sheets as much as I talk about them. I don't think any of them are made in America. So
we had to get this one from Sweden because we got the stainless steel instead of the silver. I did a lot of work looking into it.
You guys will have to shoot me a link.
So I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
So have you looked into Yoga Nidra in the past? And whether you have or you haven't, this one over here, she got certified doing Yoga Nidra. So a shameless plug. And if you wanted to, you could download the Insight Timer app. And she has a bunch of Yoga Nidra on there, but like talking about grounding and getting kind of like to the theta state in terms of brainwaves. Is it theta state or is
you're moving through all the brainwaves in a Yoga Nidra? You're getting hopefully to delta.
Yeah. So Yoga Nidra has actually been used for sufferers of PTSD, insomnia.
There's a lot of studies for PTSD and veterans. Actually, they've done a lot of work. They had a and I'm not going to be able to cite it now because it's been a while since I looked at it, but they had where they took veterans who had high levels of PTSD, which is basically when they decide if you have PTSD, it's just a number of markers and behaviors that happen. And a normal person has 40, but someone with PTSD has like upwards of 80 and 90. So that's how they decide PTSD in veterans. And, but an average person, we have 40 of those. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like we don't. And so they did these, and they took these veterans, and all they did for 8 weeks was Yoga Nidra. And they did it like 3 times a day, and that's all they did. Otherwise, they had their normal lives in this place. And
are they grounding while they do this?
Huh?
Are they grounding while they do this?
Not grounding. They're just doing Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra, which is meditation.
What's interesting, though, is, I mean, technically, you could do it grounding, too.
You could do it on a grounding mat. Absolutely.
We got to try that, too, because essentially, you're just doing it in corpse pose.
Yeah, you could do it on the bed, grounding.
Yeah, or on a mountain. with psilocybin, right? And so
Oh my God, mixing all of them?
Stop. Yeah, no, and I
Can
mean
we do a retreat? Let's do it
that's
together.
a retreat in North Georgia in the mountains. Yoga Nidra. Let's go.
Yes. No, yeah, and here's I'm gonna blow your mind with this, right? Is like this is what we practice when we go out, right? You are in the dirt, you are on the ground, you are plugged into the mycelium network underneath these trees that Native Americans touched and bent in a very historic, very what's the word I'm looking for? Profound historic, like just mega old type of place, like very hollowed ground. So if you can plug into this kind of stuff, corpse pose, whatever it is, like to promote the I think what Yoga Nidra is like, you're trying to get people to relax, right?
Yoga Nidra is actually moving through the subtle selves. It's a yogic practice, but it's like corpse pose, but you're moving through the subtle selves. So you have like your physical self, you have your prana self, you have your mental emotional self, you have your witness self, and then you have your bliss state. And it's kind of moving through very scientifically in a way through those.
My favorite part about it is most yoga nidras do like a rotation through your body. And so you have to focus energy on certain like parts of your body.
Yes.
Dude, the first time I did it, like I'm a very skeptical person, right? She's the spiritual one. I came from like science, engineering, that kind of thing. I was like, this is full of shit. I'm just gonna like fall asleep or whatever. You start going through that progression, and it like starts on one side of your body, goes to the other, and every single time, like whoever's leading you through it, they're like when they go from body part to body part, you feel almost kind of like a vibration or like like a warmth or something in that part of your body. You're not moving shit. You're literally just laying there, but your brain is activating that area where like your sensory nerves are essentially responding to that brainwave. Absolutely incredible.
Well, it was interesting. I was just saying about the study. They had 8 weeks, and I think they did yoga nidra 3 times a day for 8 weeks, and they were all highly they had the PTSD levels were the highest they found in veterans, and after 8 weeks their level of PTSD was at 40 or below. And it was completely, but now they didn't do grounding or anything. But they were probably in an environment. I haven't looked at the study myself. My teacher was talking about it, but they were probably in an environment that kept everything grounding. They probably had their feet in the ground. They probably had, that natural grounding. But the level and the sustained, because they worked on what's called an inner refuge or inner sanctuary in Yoga Nidra. So they were given the tools over that 8 weeks to basically retrain their nervous system. And so they checked in with them afterwards, and in months after, they still had the same, they were lower than the average person. So it's fascinating. People go about it in all different ways. But it would be awesome to do like a mixture of all of that. I feel, in like a sacred space.
I feel bad. I was
on
like,
the mountain.
I was like, one last question, Shane, and then we gave you a seminar.
Stop. Why did you do that? That's so wrong.
I feel like we're incorporating this kind of stuff when we go out and we do our missions. Yeah, absolutely.
Entirely possible.
Yeah.
Entirely.
That would be like amazing.
Yeah. All right.
We're gonna come down. Can we go down and I want to come down. You can guide me.
You gotta ask Shane. I mean, like,
I know I'm not.
I know you weren't in favor of me necessarily.
I think you need to work on
indulging in psychedelics, but I definitely have to work on some things. I have a shaman / therapist, I guess. But we talk a lot about, kind of like balance, spirituality, sacred feminine, sacred masculine kind of shit. And he actually holds space for men's groups that, microdose and do some macrodosing. So anyway,
that would be the way you try.
That's like a conversation for another episode, I think.
Yeah.
Before we go, where can people find more information about what you're working on, whether it's Swan or whatever else you're doing?
Yeah. If you're interested in Bitcoin and you need help with it, you can always contact me over at Swan. That's shane.hazel@swanbitcoin.com. But yeah, the passion these days is Bitcoin veterans, and it is a giant group of guys. Now we're about 40 weeks into it this week. We are across, I think, damn near every continent minus Antarctica. We've got an army of guys. There's 16 million veterans in America, and we are tapping into that, bringing them into Bitcoin. The reason why we started it was because Bitcoin is the revolution. It is the peace, the freedom, the love, the liberty that we all thought as veterans what we were signing up for, first and foremost. And so when we got a little more nihilistic after seeing behind the curtain as to what we actually were and who we were serving, we thought this would be a great way to get guys back on a mission for those things. And so inside of this, there is the Brave mission, which is what I run for the post-traumatic stress and the enlightenment side. There is a Operation Bitcoin, which is another 501c3, which is doing Skillshare for guys who are either in or out that are transitioning and want to get into the Bitcoin industry. We've got Citadels, which are these guys that are putting together plots of land that are Bitcoin centric and defendable, and community outreach and all that kind of stuff, where they're reaching out to farmers and ranchers and guys that can do security and guys that can do comms, so like ham radio and the rest of this kind of thing. So it is quite the extensive network that is growing extremely fast. It is completely decentralized.
That sounds amazing.
We dedicate ourselves to peace. We dedicate ourselves to freedom. This is a nonviolent revolution that we're going for. So and having these kind of guys with these kind of skill sets, action oriented, that have so much experience, is just an incredible ride to be on. We're just kind of trying to guide it and steer it a little bit these days, but it is branching out into a lot of different fields. And I got to tell you, it's if you have it, you don't need to be a veteran to be a part of it. It's just run by Bitcoin veterans, and anybody who's Bitcoin veteran or whatever adjacent, you guys want to come check it out, come check it out. We've got giant rooms of on Signal, just full of people in different regions, so we can plug everybody in anywhere they want.
Awesome. That's amazing.
That sounds awesome.
That's amazing. How long ago did you start this?
We started in July of last year, so this thing is
that big.
It's huge.
Amazing.
We'll be at the Bitcoin conference. Bitcoin Magazine was gracious enough to give us a 3,000 square foot room this year. So we'll have a stage. We'll have training seminars going on at Bitcoin in Nashville for Bitcoin Magazine. We'll be down at BitBlock Boom this week in Dallas, and then we'll also be out at Pacific Bitcoin in October. So if you guys, if there's any crowd that I wish I could introduce all my liberty-minded friends to, it's the Bitcoin crowd.
Yep.
It's level zero. Like this is the greatest part of Bitcoin. It's the people. And boy, they are some smart ones, and they've got some shit figured out. I will tell you that.
Awesome.
I love it.
All right. We're gonna have to do this again because we
have to give you an update on our grounding sheets.
Yeah. Matt, I mean, guys, it's always good to hear from you and talk with you and hang out, man. Like it's always enlightening. It's a good laugh, and if you're here in Georgia, open invite. Come on.
We should totally set up a retreat.
We do have 3 kids, 3 dogs, a cat, a bunny.
Don't bring the dogs and cats and bunnies. Yeah.
We'll just drag their ass on top of the mountain, just let them go, see what happens, right? Like,
yeah. Good luck. Don't mind the bear.
Be the light.
Don't be bear shit though. That's not light.
All right. With that, I appreciate it. I'm going to end the recording now. So. Thank you, brother. All right. And with that, that is the end.
Good interview.
Yeah.
He's so fun to have on.
Dude, Shane is like he's like one of those people that you meet him and there's like a light there, and I'm really happy to see it too, because for a while he was a little down, like his light was a little dimmer because of his back and all the stuff he had to go through with that. But I mean, shit, he's come out the other end like positive. Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, so
I really enjoyed that one.
With that, I want to thank 24 of you made it to the end of this. This is absolutely fantastic. We're going on 2 hours. Look, if you learned something, if you found it interesting or whatever, please help us out. Give us a thumbs up.
All the books that were talked about in the thing.
If you didn't see this, if you're watching on, say, like Twitter, or you're kind of like listening to the recorded version or watching the recorded version afterward, you didn't see the live chat. definitely check out the chat. I've tried to throw in
like
links
the immortality key
to a lot of the stuff in the comments. So
that was new. We never get to do that.
You could find it on the Facebook feed. You could find it on the YouTube feed. You could find it on the Twitch feed. I know those comments hit those platforms just because we're using StreamYard, and the comments go out to some of them, but not all of them. So if you're following Ungovernable or Ungovernable Pod on any of those platforms, like I said, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, you can see all of those links.
I feel like we're going to talk about immortality key again, too, as you finish the book. I think there's a lot to... I feel like I should get my friend who's a therapist out in California to come talk about... Well, she does ecstatic and I don't even know, like ecstatic dance. And yeah, I think, and she's the one who does the psychedelic mushrooms and stuff. And I think, and she's very into the feminist value of what was religion at one point.
Yeah.
She would be interesting to have on talking about that book.
Yeah. And we didn't even really get into it. I mean, like the immortality key kind of talks about that too, where kind of the primary role of women within spirituality and whatever you want to call it, religion or religious philosophy or spirituality, has been, I don't even know what the word, I mean, a lot of women have used to be kind of like the
kind of flipped on
vessels
its head, right?
of spiritual knowledge. And then for a long period of time, they were then almost kind of demonized. They were looked at as the witch with the cauldron.
Well, I was just talking to someone
that was going to put
a
hex on you, you know.
I was just talking. I think the History Channel's been showing things about, like, on Mary Magdalene, who I don't know. I was just talking to someone the other day, like these people that have been in different organized religion, right, from the Bible, as shamed or like a whore. Was that how she was, like a horror kind of thing? And the History Channel was just showing a big thing on Mary Magdalene, how she was actually his wife.
Yeah.
And like a soulmate kind of thing. So I mean, it's interesting. I'm not saying that that's the immortality key, but at the same time, it's that idea that things get put in behind a filter.
Yeah. Over time, they end up getting
and what's the real truth?
You know, they get translated, they get kind of contorted and stuff like that. And so, really, I like the idea of just kind of trying to boil things down to their essence. And so all of the kind of the other stuff that kind of floats around the outside of it, that is like the more whatever scandalous or salacious things, I'm almost even less interested in those kind of things. I'm more so interested in, like, you know, what's at the core of it. But we're going to continue to dig into this.
You should do a book club on it or something.
I was actually, you get out of my mind. I was going to talk about that. We may start a book club here in the near future once we start kind of getting at these episodes a little bit more consistently, because I think there's books out there that are
Becoming Supernatural,
really going to help people, because at the very least, whether or not you actually end up buying into the book itself, it's exposing you, right, to things that you normally wouldn't get some knowledge about or some exposure to. So I think there's some really pivotal stuff out there.
I'm going to read the Immortality Key, and you're going to read Becoming Supernatural.
I mean, I want to...
It's full of science.
I want to push people in the direction. I'm going to like, we're going to read all this like anarchist, like libertarian
and then
stuff.
You're all like, read
but no. Let's stick to the spiritual. Let's stick to the mind body balance and the physical health.
There's got to be books that mix them.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
we'll find them.
Yeah. There's definitely crossover. 100%. We're gonna find it, or we're gonna make it. Like, I mean, that's just the way it goes. But so we're going to try next week to get Copperhead Hill Farms on. We're gonna talk about what actually is food, because
organic, fresh.
This translates, I think, also into
organic
grounding.
Farmers.
I think it translates into resonance and the energy that is included in the food that you end up ingesting and ends up becoming at least a part of, you know, like a piece of it becomes a part of you. I think all of this goes hand in hand.
It makes me think of that John Bush, when he talked about how they used, was it mushrooms to turn the soil over so that because the soil gets so depleted?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look it up before next week.
Yeah. So we have some cool stuff coming up. So definitely, if you're not subbed, hit the sub. If you're watching or listening on another platform, do us a huge favor. find another platform that we're on, like Rumble or YouTube, and give us a sub or a like on there too. Just because
we've had issues.
We talk about stuff, we get episodes thrown out and strikes against us and all kinds of stuff.
We've never been canceled completely.
That is true.
But we have had things taken down.
Our goal is to get big enough one day to get completely canceled.
But you'll be on Rumble.
Yes. Yeah, we are on Rumble. So definitely check out Ungovernable Pod on Rumble. So with that, everyone have an absolutely awesome
good week
end to your Sunday evening.
Or beginning of your week.
Fantastic beginning to your week.
It's going to be good weather in Jersey. I don't know where y'all are, but
hopefully, knock on wood, that you have good weather where you're at. Spring's coming up. So with that,
here, I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, in Jersey it is, but not everywhere.
No, the 19th of March was the first day of spring.
Yeah, but in Jersey, not everywhere.
Oh, you mean like Australia?
No,
then
like
you're in
pretty sure like North Idaho and
in Australia,
northern Maine.
Isn't it like we're winter and they're summer?
I don't know. We'll talk about this next episode. So with that, have a very good evening and a great start to your week. And we'll be back here next Sunday night, 7 p.m. See you.